Brazil, a land of football legends, samba rhythms, and breathtaking rainforests. But behind the postcard-perfect beaches and carnival parades lies a nation split right down the middle. Not just by class or race, but by history, geography, and identity. From the gleaming skyscrapers of Sao Paulo to the struggling communities of the Northeast, divisions run like the fault lines through its society, politics, and economy. Why is Brazil so fractured? How did a country with such promise become a battleground of ideologies, regions, and histories? Let's start with a number that will blow your mind. Brazil's Gini coefficient, the measure of income inequality, sits at 0.53 in 2020, making it one of the most unequal countries on Earth. But here's what makes this truly staggering. Brazil is simultaneously the world's 12th largest economy and home to extreme poverty that rivals sub-Saharan Africa. In the wealthy neighborhood of Jardins in Sao Paulo, you'll find boutiques selling handbags worth more than most Brazilians make in a year. Drive just 30 minutes to the periphery and you'll encounter families living in wooden shacks without running water. This isn't an accident of geography. It's the result of centuries of concentrated wealth. The top 1% of Brazilians hold nearly 30% of the nation's wealth, while millions live on less than $2 a day. Take the story of Maria, a 34-year-old single mother in Rosina, Rio's largest favela. She works as a cleaner, earning $200 a month, barely enough to feed her 2 children. Just a few miles away in the affluent neighborhood of Leblon, executives dine at restaurants where a single meal costs more than Maria's monthly income. This contrast isn't just that urban-rural areas face similar disparities. In the Northeast, subsistence farmers struggle with drought and a lack of infrastructure, while agribusiness tycoons in the South export soybeans to global markets, amassing fortunes. But here's where it gets really disturbing. This inequality isn't shrinking, it's growing. Despite decades of social programs, Brazil's middle class has been squeezed out of existence. The country that once promised to become a global powerhouse now watches its citizens choose between food and medicine. Brazil's internal division runs so deep that many joke it's actually 2 countries sharing one flag. The industrialized South and Southeast regions operate like a different nation entirely from the agricultural Northeast and North. The country is split into 5 major regions: North, Northeast, Central West, Southeast, and South, each with distinct identities, economies, and challenges. The Southeast, home to Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, generates nearly 55% of Brazil's GDP, despite occupying just 10% of its land. Meanwhile, the Northeast, with 27% of the population, contributes only 14% to GDP and faces chronic poverty and drought. This disparity manifests in heartbreaking ways. In affluent Sao Paulo, life expectancy reaches 76 years, comparable to developed European countries. Meanwhile, in poor northeastern states like Alagoas, life expectancy drops to 67 years. Being born in the wrong Brazilian state can literally cost you a decade. The infrastructure tells the same story. The South enjoys highways that rival those in Germany, while the Northeast struggles with dirt roads that become impassable during the rainy season. High-speed internet blankets southern cities, but vast swaths of the Amazon remain digitally isolated. Perhaps nowhere is Brazil's division more evident than in its politics. The 2022 presidential election, pitting leftist Lula against right-wing incumbent Bolsonaro, was one of the most polarized in Brazil's history. The 2022 elections didn't just divide voters, they split families, ended friendships, and turned dinner tables into battlegrounds. Lula won with 50.9% of the vote, but the narrow margin reflected a deep split electorate. In January 2023, thousands of Bolsonaro supporters stormed government buildings in Brasilia, echoing the US Capitol riot in a desperate attempt to overturn the results. This event underscored the growing chasm between Brazil's political camps. Bolsonaro supporters, often from the wealthier South and Southeast, viewed him as a champion against corruption and socialism, chanting, "Our flag will never be red," to reject the Workers' Party's leftist agenda. Meanwhile, Lula's base, concentrated in the northeast, saw him as a savior of the poor, credited with programs like Bolsa Familia, which provided cash transfers to millions. But perhaps most concerning is how the polarization has undermined trust in institutions. Polls show that less than 30% of Brazilians trust their electoral system, despite international observers consistently rating Brazilian elections as free and fair. When citizens lose faith in democracy itself, the foundations of society begin to crumble. Social media amplifies these divides, with Brazilians among the world's most active users. Misinformation spreads rapidly, fueling distrust. Brazil's internal fractures don't just hurt Brazilians, they're destabilizing South America and weakening the country's global influence. A nation that should be leading Latin America instead serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of inequality and polarization. During international negotiations, Brazil's delegates often contradict each other. Environmental ministers promote conservation, while agriculture ministers push for deforestation. This inconsistency has cost Brazil credibility on the world stage and lucrative trade agreements with European partners concerned about Amazon's destruction. The brain drain tells its own story. Educated Brazilians are leaving in record numbers, seeking opportunities in countries where merit matters more than connections. Portugal has become home to over 400,000 Brazilian immigrants, many of them doctors, engineers, and entrepreneurs who gave up on their homeland. Brazil's retreat from regional leadership has created a power vacuum that other nations are eager to fill. China has stepped in as a major investor and trading partner, often extracting resources while providing minimal technology transfer. Without a unified vision, Brazil finds itself becoming a commodity exporter rather than an innovation leader. Despite these deep divisions, Brazil possesses unique strengths that could enable healing. The country's cultural creativity, natural resources, and human talent remain extraordinary. Brazilian agriculture feeds hundreds of millions globally. Systematic change requires addressing root causes. Land reform, better education access, and racial equity policies could reduce inequalities, but they face resistance from powerful elites. Political reconciliation is equally daunting. Social media echo chambers and distrust in institutions make dialogue difficult. Brazil's history of resilience, from surviving military rule to emerging as a global economic player, suggests potential for progress, but only if leaders and citizens confront these divides head-on. What makes Brazil's situation particularly concerning is how these divisions have become self-reinforcing. Political polarization makes it harder to address economic inequality. Economic inequality fuels political resentment. Regional differences create competing political coalitions. Environmental conflicts become proxy wars for broader ideological battles. Social media amplifies all of these tensions and makes compromise more difficult. The world is watching Brazil's experiment in democracy and development. As other countries face their own struggles with polarization and inequality, Brazil's experience, both its failures and its potential successes, will provide crucial lessons about the challenges facing diverse developing democracies in the 21st century. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe.